From a church deacon who built homes for the homeless while burying children alive in concrete, to a prosthetist who drained bodies of blood and left them as frozen art installations in public spaces. In this video, we're comparing Arthur Mitchell's 3-decade killing spree against Brian Moser's personal mission to reunite with his brother. First up, we got kill count, 30 years of cycles versus 1-season campaign. Arthur Mitchell operated undetected for over 3 decades, with an estimated 200+ victims beginning in 1979. When audiences first meet Arthur Mitchell in Dexter Season 4, his kill count already exceeded 200 victims, all murdered during kill cycles since 1979. FBI Special Agent Frank Lundy's timeline ultimately reached back to 1979 after he reevaluated earlier cases, aligning Trinity's travel and work patterns with unsolved homicides. Arthur's kill cycle consisted of 4 murders: a 10-year-old boy buried alive, a woman murdered in a bathtub with her femoral artery sliced, a woman forced to jump to her death, and a father of 2 bludgeoned to death. He used his 4 Walls, 1 Heart charitable home-building organization to travel around the country to cover for his murder spree as a dump site for his first victim in each cycle. Trinity's longevity represents operational excellence. 30 years evading detection while maintaining a public identity as a church deacon, high school teacher, and charity organizer demonstrates sophisticated compartmentalization. Each cycle began with abducting a 10-year-old boy who represented Arthur at the age he lost his innocence. The boy would be drugged, dressed in pajamas, given a toy train, then buried alive in fresh concrete at a 4 Walls, 1 Heart construction site. 5 days later, he killed a young woman in her bathtub by slicing her femoral artery, recreating his sister Vera's accidental death. Next came forcing a mother of 2 to jump from a building, mirroring his mother's suicide. Finally, he bludgeoned a father of 2 with a hammer, representing his father Henry, whom the cycle implies Arthur may have killed. The 4 Walls charity provided perfect cover, traveled to different cities for construction projects, access to vacant properties and construction sites for burials, community trust that prevented suspicion. Arthur Mitchell's estimated over 200 victims across 3 decades represents one of the most extensive serial killer operations in the Dexter universe. But before we continue, if you're enjoying this forensic breakdown, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss on our crime analysis videos. But what happens when your entire killing spree is designed to send a message to one specific person? Brian Moser's confirmed on-screen victims are several, with additional killings strongly implied through his cover identity and stage messages to Dexter. Brian murdered prostitutes, drained their bodies of blood, dismembered them, and freezing their severed body parts in refrigerated trucks, earning him the nickname the Ice Truck Killer. The bodies, as I said, were drained of blood, precisely dismembered and arranged as public displays, with neatly wrapped pieces left where police would find them. His victims included the pool victim, whose body was drained and neatly wrapped, the fountain victim with missing head, and Sherry Taylor, whose fingertips were found in Brian's refrigerated truck. Brian also killed Rudy Cooper to steal his identity and murdered Joe Driscoll, his biological father, by injecting him with diabetic insulin to make it appear as cardiac arrest. Brian's killing campaign served a singular purpose: reconnecting with Dexter. Every murder contained clues specifically tailored for his brother. The bloodless body spoke to Dexter's obsession with blood. The precise dismemberment mirrored Dexter's surgical approach. The public displays and locations tied to Harry's lessons showed intimate knowledge of Dexter's past. Beyond the Ice Truck murders, he killed Rudy Cooper to steal his identity and murdered their father, Joe Driscoll, using insulin injection staged as natural death. His operational timeframe compressed into months rather than decades. Brian executed an intense campaign to find his brother, and then stopped when he achieved his goal. His endgame wasn't continuing to kill indefinitely, it was recruiting Dexter as his partner. Brian Moser's confirmed victim count over a concentrated timeframe demonstrates focused execution rather than long-term operational success. So the winner in this case is Trinity, estimated over 200 victims across 3 decades against a limited confirmed count in a months-long campaign. Arthur Mitchell's body count represents sustained operational success on a completely different scale. Drop a comment below and let me know which killer's method would be harder to investigate, Trinity's decade-long cycles or the Ice Truck Killer's bloodless displays. But numbers only tell part of the story. What separates these killers is why they chose their victims and how they executed their kills. Arthur Mitchell's kill cycle followed an identical 4-stage pattern for 30 years, with each murder recreating a specific traumatic event from his childhood. Arthur's childhood trauma began when he accidentally startled his sister Vera while she took a shower, causing a fatal flaw that sliced her femoral artery. His mother died by suicide after jumping off of a bridge, and his father Henry grew increasingly violent before being beaten to death, presumably by Arthur himself. Arthur would abduct a 10-year-old boy who would be forced to wear pajamas and play with a toy train, representing the final moment Arthur ever felt happy. The child would then be drugged and buried alive in wet cement at a 4 walls, 1 heart construction site. 5 days later, Arthur would find a young woman and make her lie naked in a bathtub before slicing her femoral artery. Next, he forced a mother of 2 to jump from a building to her death. Finally, he bludgeoned a father of 2 to death with a hammer. After the bathtub murder, he scalds himself in the shower, and after the jump, he provokes a beating as ritual self-punishment. Trinity's method showed pathological consistency. Each cycle follows 4 murders: a 10-year-old boy buried in fresh concrete at a 4 walls, 1 heart site, a young woman bled out in a bathtub via femoral artery cut, a mother of 2 forced to jump to her death, and a father of 2 bludgeoned with a hammer. Arthur Mitchell hides in plain sight as a church deacon and high school teacher, using his home building charity for travel cover and disposal sites. The self-punishment between kills demonstrated awareness paired with compulsion to continue. He couldn't stop recreating his family's destruction. His victims represented specific family roles rather than random selection. Mothers required 2 children. Fathers required 2 children. Young women had to be childless. The specificity created patterns investigators could identify, yet the long intervals between cycles and geographical spread made connection difficult. Trinity's rigid 4-stage cycle, recreating specific family traumas, created an unchanging murder pattern across 3 decades. Now, let's look at another killer who turned bodies into art installations. Brian Moser drained victims completely of blood, dismembered them with surgical precision, and displayed their bodies publicly as messages specifically designed for Dexter. Brian strapped victims to a table, tilted them upside down, slit their carotid artery, and allowed them to simply bleed out. Bodies were displayed in plain sight. Bodies were drained of blood, precisely dismembered, and arranged as public displays, with neatly wrapped pieces left where police would find them. Brian left an ice block featuring the fingertips of a victim displayed perfectly in the center of a refrigerated truck he deliberately left for the police to find. The multicolored fingernails function as a symbolic message tied to the brothers' shared past with Laura Moser. He abducted Tony Tucci and amputated a hand and a foot while keeping him alive, placing staged evidence at the same time each morning at sites that echoed Dexter's past. Brian's method served communication rather than compulsion. Every detail contained meaning for Dexter. No blood at scenes because Dexter loved blood. Surgical dismemberment because Dexter used surgical precision. Public displays in Miami Metro's jurisdiction to ensure Dexter's involvement. Brian's displays, multicolored nails, and drop sites are coded messages for Dexter, referencing Laura Moser and places tied to Harry's lessons. The Tony Tucci amputation appeared at locations tied to Harry's code lessons, intimate knowledge that only someone from Dexter's past could possess. The ice truck preserved bodies and prevented decomposition. Brian's surgical skills as a prosthetist gave him anatomical knowledge for precise dismemberment. Each crime scene was a message, each victim a clue. The entire campaign designed to make Dexter remember their shared past and recognize his brother. Brian Moser's bloodless dismemberment and public artistic displays created elaborate messages specifically tailored to communicate with Dexter. So our winner is Trinity. Consistent ritualistic cycles across 30 years against customized displays designed to send messages to one person. Arthur's method demonstrated sustainable operational procedure, while Brian's method was unsustainable personal communication. But perfect planning means nothing if you can't maintain your cover. And that's where a family man facade confronts dating your target's sister. Arthur Mitchell maintained a perfect public identity as a church deacon, family man, and charity organizer that provided operational cover and prevented suspicion for 3 decades. Arthur presented himself as an unassuming church deacon, high school teacher, and family man. He maintained a positive public image and set up 4 walls, 1 heart sites across the country. Arthur had a family which included his wife Sally and their teenage children Jonah and Rebecca, plus an illegitimate daughter Christine Hill from a previous relationship. Frank Lundy theorized that Trinity was a loner with no life outside killing. When Dexter discovered Arthur was actually a husband, father, and prominent figure in a Christian home-building organization, it contradicted all FBI assumptions. Arthur's operational security was compartmentalized perfection. Church deacon status gave him community trust and moral authority. High school teaching created a stable, legitimate profession. 4 walls, 1 heart charity provided alibi and travel justification for kills in different cities. His family life, though privately abusive, publicly projected normalcy. Nobody suspected the helpful church leader building homes for poor families. The FBI couldn't even confirm his existence for years. When investigations finally identified patterns, the assumption was an isolated loner without attachments. Arthur was the opposite, publicly connected to everyone. The charity work meant his presence in different cities during kill cycles appear philanthropic rather than suspicious. Construction sites provided burial locations. Travel schedules aligned with school breaks. Even when Dexter infiltrated his life using the Kyle Butler alias, Arthur's public mask never cracked in front of others. Later canon presents Rebecca's death as a suicide, while Jonah admits he killed his mother. Arthur Mitchell's church deacon and family man facade created perfect operational security that prevented detection for 30 years and contradicted all investigator assumptions. But what happens when your operational security depends on getting romantically involved with your target's sister? Brian Moser infiltrated Dexter's life by dating his sister, Deborah Morgan, creating dangerous proximity that ultimately exposed him and led to his death. Brian developed a relationship with Deborah Morgan, Dexter's adoptive sister, while treating one of his victims, Tony Tucci. As Deborah fell in love with him, he used her as a means to get closer to Dexter. Brian explained to Deborah after kidnapping her that dating her had all been part of his master plan to get close to Dexter through her. When Brian assaulted Angel Batista, he lied to Dexter about a cut on his lip, claiming it was a lab accident. This led Dexter to realize Brian was the ice truck killer. Brian immediately kidnapped Deborah after his identity was exposed, which led police to suspect his involvement. Brian's proximity strategy was operationally reckless. Dating Deborah gave him access to Dexter, but created massive exposure. He attended police functions, met Miami Metro detectives, inserted himself directly into the investigation's social circle. When he assaulted Angel Batista to protect his identity, the lie about the cut unraveled. Dexter's forensic knowledge led to discovery. Then, Brian escalated by kidnapping Deborah, burning every bridge. The reveal was intentional. Brian wanted Dexter to know who he was, but the execution forced confrontation before Dexter was ready to join him. Brian's operational security sacrificed sustainability for immediate connection. He stole Rudy Cooper's identity and used it to get close to Dexter quickly. The entire campaign was a sprint rather than a marathon. Get Dexter's attention, reveal the truth, recruit him as a partner. That plan required Dexter's cooperation, which, as we know, never came. Brian Moser's strategy of dating Deborah Morgan to access Dexter created dangerous proximity that accelerated his exposure and directly led to his capture and death. So the winner in this case is Trinity, a church deacon facade that provided 30 years of operational cover against dating your target's sister and getting exposed within months. Arthur's security was a sustainable long-term operation, while Brian's was an unsustainable short-term goal. Now, the question that comes to mind now is, why did these killers really kill? Because motivation reveals everything. Arthur Mitchell killed compulsively to suppress and recreate his childhood trauma, unable to escape the cycle despite attempts at redemption. Arthur's kills to suppress his childhood trauma derived from accidentally causing his sister's death and ruining his family. At age 10, Arthur startled his sister Vera in the shower, causing her to slip and sever her femoral artery. His mother committed suicide by jumping from a bridge, and his father Henry became violent and was eventually beaten to death. Arthur claims to take no pleasure in killing and harbors remorse. After each murder, he punishes himself by taking a scalding hot shower and goading a drunk into beating him up. When befriending Dexter as Kyle Butler, Mitchell believes God sent Dexter to him and attempts suicide, but Dexter saves his life to kill him later. Trinity's motivation was pathological compulsion rooted in unresolved trauma. He couldn't escape recreating his family's destruction. Each kill cycle processed the same grief. The self-punishment between kills showed awareness paired with inability to stop. His religious faith created cognitive dissonance. Church deacon publicly, compulsive killer privately. His attempt at suicide when spreading his sister's ashes demonstrated desire for escape from the cycle, but he couldn't stop. 30 years, estimated over 200 victims, all recreating the same trauma. His family suffered his private darkness. His daughter Rebecca eventually died by suicide. His illegitimate daughter, Christine, shot FBI agent Lundy trying to win his approval. Even his charity work, building homes, represented attempted redemption that couldn't balance his compulsion to kill. Arthur Mitchell killed from inescapable trauma compulsion, eternally recreating his family's destruction despite awareness of his actions and desire for redemption. Now compare that to a killer with a completely different endgame. Brian Moser killed specifically to draw Dexter's attention, reunite with his brother, and recruit him as a killing partner to embrace their shared nature. Brian witnessed the brutal dismemberment of his mother, Laura Moser, at age 5, which left him mentally scarred. Unlike Dexter, he did not have the guidance of Harry Morgan or the Code of Harry to prevent him from killing the innocent. Brian was sent to a psychiatric hospital instead of being adopted. Harry Morgan found and rejected him, noticing a darker streak in him than in Dexter. Brian told Dexter his history after their separation and tried to convince Dexter to kill Deborah together in the same manner he killed his victims. Brian's motivation was reunion and validation. He spent 16 years in psychiatric institutions after Harry rejected him. Dexter got adopted, got Harry's code, got a family. Brian got institutionalized, got abandoned, got nothing. His killing spree was communication. Every bloodless body, every surgical dismemberment, every public display, it was messages saying, "I'm here, I'm like you, remember me." The multicolored fingernails symbolized their shared past with Laura. When he finally revealed himself, his ask was simple: kill together, be brothers. Killing Deborah would symbolically sever Dexter's adoptive identity and cement his true nature as Brian's brother. Once he achieved contact, once Dexter knew who he was, Brian stopped the Ice Truck Killer campaign. The killing was never the point, the brotherhood was. Brian Moser killed specifically to reconnect with Dexter, with every murder serving as communication to draw his brother's attention and recruit him as a killing partner. So, once again, the winner is Trinity, inescapable trauma compulsion driving 30 years of sustained killing against a focused campaign designed to recruit a specific partner. Arthur's motivation drove sustainable operation, while Brian's motivation had a defined endpoint. Arthur Mitchell dominated. He was methodical, sustained, successful. Over 3 decades with an estimated over 200 victims, he operated as one of America's most prolific serial killers while maintaining the perfect cover as a church deacon and family man. Brian Moser was focused, personal, temporary. His confirmed victims across a months-long campaign served a singular purpose: finding and recruiting his brother Dexter. Once he achieved contact, the killing campaign ended. This comparison reveals the difference between long-term operational success and short-term targeted mission. Trinity's estimated 200+ victims across 3 decades represents sustainable serial killer operation. Brian's confirmed count represents a focused recruitment campaign. Arthur killed from compulsion that he couldn't escape. Brian killed to achieve a specific goal. Trinity's body count was exponentially higher because his operation was designed to continue indefinitely. Brian's operation had a defined endpoint: reuniting with Dexter. Arthur's 4-stage cycle recreated family trauma identically across decades. 10-year-old boys buried alive, young women in bathtubs, mothers forced to jump, fathers bludgeoned, each cycle identical. Brian's method changed per victim based on the message that he wanted to send Dexter, each murder customized for communication rather than ritual repetition. Trinity's operational security used legitimate community standing as cover: church deacon, high school teacher, 4 Walls, 1 Heart charity organizer, public persona above suspicion, family life projecting normalcy. Brian's operational security required dangerous proximity by dating Deborah, direct insertion in the Miami Metro social circle. Every interaction increased exposure risk. Arthur maintained cover for 30 years. Brian's cover collapsed within months. Trinity trauma compulsion was inescapable. Self-punishment between kills, attempted suicide when spreading sister's ashes. Religious faith created cognitive dissonance. Awareness of his actions paired with an inability to stop. Brian's brotherhood mission was achieved when he revealed himself to Dexter. The killing campaign served recruitment. Once Dexter knew who he was, the Ice Truck Killer stopped operating. Mission accomplished. Dexter just refused to join him in the end. Arthur Mitchell killed Rita Morgan as his final victim, leaving Dexter's son Harrison in her blood, mirroring the trauma that created Dexter's dark passenger. The Trinity Killer's legacy was generational trauma. Brian Moser tried to eliminate Deborah to sever Dexter's adoptive identity. The Ice Truck Killer's legacy was attempted reunion through murder. The comparison isn't close because one killer optimized for longevity while the other optimized for connection. Trinity's operation could have continued indefinitely. His decades of operation demonstrated sustainable murder methodology that evaded detection through geographic spread, long intervals between cycles, and legitimate community cover. Brian's operation had a maximum lifespan measured in months, his entire campaign designed to achieve contact with Dexter. If Arthur Mitchell hadn't been caught by Dexter, his next kill cycle would have followed the same pattern as all the previous ones. If Brian Moser had successfully recruited Dexter, the Ice Truck Killer campaign would have ended and transformed into something new. two brothers killing together. One man represents sustained operational success across decades. The other represents targeted mission execution across months. And that fundamental difference explains why Trinity's body count, longevity, and operational security so dramatically exceeded the Ice Truck Killer's focus campaign. Arthur Mitchell was building a decades-long career. Brian Moser was executing a recruitment mission. If you enjoyed this breakdown comparing Trinity's sustained operation to the Ice Truck Killer's focus mission, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, and check out our last video, why Dexter versus the BTK Killer isn't even close.